south of me.
Welcome, Liz Fouther Branch, the stepdaughter and family historian of the late sweet baby James Benton, who is being inducted into the Oregon Music Hall of Fame tonight. Now, James passed away on February 14th, 2016, at the age of 85, and he played music from the late 50s here in Portland until his retirement in 2015. So that means he was 84 by the time he retired. Wow. What an amazing career. Let's get some background here, since you're the family historian. James was born and raised in Arkansas. When did he come to Portland, and what brought him here?
I'm not exactly sure what year they came to Portland, but his dad came to work in the shipyards. Grandpa Eugene.
In the shipyards, would that be what is now Swan Island, I believe?
Yeah, because I think they came, I'm not sure if they came before Vanport.
Oh, they did, okay.
Yeah, so
wow.
It had to be to work on Swan Island, probably.
Now, when he was playing in Portland in the late 50s, he was part of the Williams Avenue music scene.
Right.
Have you heard any stories about that part of his career?
Have I heard any stories?
Can you tell us some?
My story that I remember the best is having to cart his shirts down from our house on Shaver down Williams Avenue to the Cotton Club, because he had to have starched shirts. They always wore suits. They always wore ties. They had to look a particular kind of way. This was all set up by my dad. And so they had to look smart, as he said. So they always wore these white starched shirts, these ties, gray suits or black suits or blue suits, navy blue suits. And we had to walk the shirts down because they had to be cleaned every 2 or 3 days, depending on how many places he was playing. And in those days, during the day, he worked in a factory. Oh. So he worked in the factory during the day. He would play the club at night, usually sometime after school and before dinner. I might have to walk the shirts down to the Cotton Club to make sure that they were there and ready for them to go in the evening, because he would be at work.
Dressed to impress.
Yes.
And the sounds that they made, I'm sure, were just as impressive.
Yes.
Did you ever get to see any of those shows, or did you just get to take the shirts down?
Well, the wonderful thing about just being from Portland, and then just between my mom and my dad, my mom was an artist here as well, and everyone that they knew, yes, I could sometimes go in and sit in the restaurant part of the Cotton Club. I could not go into the club, and just listen to them play.
Now, he's often referred to as Portland's Ray Charles, but he had his own sweet, smooth vocal style. Was the Ray Charles identity kind of just for publicity more than anything, or who started calling him that?
I don't know when that started. It started really early, so I would probably say in the late 50s, early 60s. I don't know who started it, but I think he loved the fact that they were comparing him to Ray Charles, and he definitely did have his own style. He kind of started off as also a musician and not necessarily the lead singer, but he enjoyed singing.
He played with many Portland jazz and blues artists over the years. Who are some of the people that you remember the best?
My favorites were Frank Martin, who lived down the street from us. He was inducted into the Kansas City Hall of Fame, I believe. But he taught piano, and he lived like 2 blocks from us. And so you could go down there and listen to the piano lessons. We also had people playing in our backyard too. So it would be people like Emmett Williams, Delbert McSwain, which we grew up with the McSwain family, so they were all singers, mostly in church. Aaron 88 Keys, and people don't really know about Aaron because he died fairly young. But he and his brother were off what they call the chicken circuit. And it was tap dancer and a piano playing little brother, and they kind of grew up, and he could play anything by ear, whether it was classical or jazz or just anything. And I was always fascinated by him because he just was young, was the youngest one of the group at that time. So I must have been about 8 or so. But he could play anything, you know.
Now, during the last 20 or so years of his life, James Benton was not about to slow down. No. In fact, I think that probably was one of the most active times in his career.
Yes.
Is there a reason for that?
One is he would probably never stop. And I kind of said this story a little bit earlier. I don't know what kind of individual he would be, but he'd be quite a character if he weren't singing and playing. He loved the music. He loved finding new and emerging artists. He was always sort of mentoring as he was playing. He was always kind of bringing people along. Esperanza Spalding is one of the people he introduced when she was like 14 or something like that. We weren't sure how he even got her in the club, but he did. He just had to, it was one of those things that he had to do. And I think the greatest thing about even just he and my mother working together is she was good at setting the scene. So even when we had a converted garage, which we called the Outback. My grandfather called it that. I'll tell you another little quirky story. My grandfather called it that because he didn't want people traipsing through the house all day long. So he always sent people around the house to the Outback. So you can walk the alleyway to the back gate and then go to the converted garage. And so someone would knock on the door, and all we were ever told is just tell them to go out back. So we said, they're out back. They're out back. You know, you can't come through here. They're out back. So that was my other little quirky story. Doesn't seem as funny now, but it was funny then. Even when he moved out to Scappoose, he had parties out there. We always had barbecues. That's where I was going with that. So every Saturday or Sunday, there would be a barbecue. There'd always be some new, I remember Mel Brown was one of the new cats to come play in the backyard. And so everybody would come to the barbecue. Then you would go to Outback. And now there, I used to sit there every night to listen to them play until my mother would make me go to bed. But that was the other thing that my brother and I always thought, that everybody went to sleep to music and woke up to music. Because they would literally, after gigging all night, no matter where they were, Leroy Vinegar, all of them would come to the backyard and play.
That's outstanding. What a way to be raised, I think.
I always, after I got older and wise enough to know that we were making noise, I thought, like, why didn't the neighbors ever call the cops on us?
Because it was sweet.
Yeah, the music was so captivating.
Yeah.
That literally, there would be days we'd have people like up and down the alley. They'd be in the alleyway just dancing and partying. So those are some of my best years. I really loved that. I thought, everybody lives like, don't you live like this? I live like this. Now, the other funny thing about it is he didn't ever want any of the girls to be musicians.
Really?
Or singers, although he got one, because Tony Lincoln is one.
Now, he certainly played a lot of festivals, the Waterfront Blues Festival, the Mount Hood Jazz Festival, the Bite.
Yep.
And he played great venues, Jimmy Mac's, the Schnitzer. What was his favorite kind of venue? Did he like the more intimate, or did he like the big festivals with thousands of people?
The Blues Festival he loved. He had to do that every year. He did it a few times very, very sick, actually, and probably shouldn't have done it, but he did it anyway. The smaller venues, one of our favorite places was the Beachcomber. They had the best chef, and he made the best burgers. No, but the Beachcomber in Lake Oswego, which I don't think is there any longer, was one of his favorite smaller venues. Cotton Club was a favorite. Jimmy Mac's was a favorite because he could sit there and just history would walk into Jimmy Mac's, right? So everybody would be sitting there anytime that the stories could be told. And then he was the member of another like community group. They didn't often play there, but he would go there and just tell people stories about being raised in Portland. And you guys may not have known this, but he also played a cowboy in a film. I have those pictures.
What film?
Where he plays a cowboy. I can't remember the name of the film, but he played a cowboy. I think he was like 16 years old.
Wow.
So that's another quirky thing that he did. So they made movies. We had reel-to-reels. There's some stuff now that I have to convert and see what's even on it, because I think it's even some film of us in our backyard.
Be some nice surprises there. Yeah. Now, what does it mean to you and his friends and his family for James Benton to be inducted into the Oregon Music Hall of Fame?
I am glad because I think he would be glad. But even more than that, Grandma Benton, she was like the best, Miss Brooksy. I have to tell you about Miss Brooksy. Miss Brooksy worked at the Benton Hotel for like 40 years. So another person that worked for a long time. She didn't work there because she necessarily had to after a while. She worked there because she wanted to. And she would kind of travel around to all the hotels and supposed to be on vacation, but she would work while she was on vacation. And I think she would probably be the one that would be the most excited. And then also, James has a sister named Annette, who's still living. And she's in a senior facility right now, and she would be over the moon because that's her big brother. So I think those, and I think even Papa Eugene, he might even have something to say about this, about him being inducted, even though he was very, very quiet.
Well, congratulations. We welcome sweet baby James Benton into the Oregon Music Hall of Fame. Thank you for talking with us and sharing your family history, Liz.
Thank you.